Previously on A Love That Lingered, Arthur and Grace exchanged vows in the garden of Caldwell Manor, surrounded by family, friends, and a world that, for just one day, forgot its looming troubles. Arthur, who so rarely allowed his composure to crack, shed a rare tear as Grace walked toward him, radiant and certain. Their union was sealed not only with words, but with a promise to face whatever lay ahead, hand in hand. This is episode 21, A Morning of Firsts. The manor felt strangely hushed the morning after the wedding, as though it too was resting from the strain of so much joy. The grand hall, which only hours ago had echoed with music and laughter, now lay in soft silence, traces of last night's revelry lingering like dreams left behind. A few wilted petals scattered across the marble floor, faint smudges of candle wax clinging to the candelabras, and the lingering warmth of wine and roses in the air. Grace stirred first. The room she shared with Arthur, their room, was different from any she had slept in before, though she had crossed its threshold countless times in passing. The heavy velvet curtains were drawn, filtering in the light of dawn in muted, golden ribbons. The four-poster bed was vast and soft, layered in sheets that carried a faint scent of lavender, a thoughtful detail she had not overlooked, even in her drowsy bliss. Arthur, beside her, lay still with his arm draped loosely around her waist, his face turned toward her in unguarded quiet. It struck her then how rarely she had seen him like this, stripped of armor and duty, neither lord nor soldier, but simply a man at peace. His lashes were long against his cheek, his lips softened into a faint curve, and for once the weight of his world did not press down on him. Her chest swelled with a quiet, aching happiness. The day before had been everything she had once only dared to imagine, extravagant and overwhelming, yes, but at its heart deeply intimate. Yet this moment, in the fragile stillness of morning, felt even more sacred. Grace shifted slightly, careful not to wake him, and studied the ring on her finger, its silver gleam catching what light filtered through the curtains. 3 years ago she had been a stranger wandering into a manor, whispered about in town. Now she lay at its center, bound to the man who had once frightened her with his guarded distance. But as her thoughts drifted, so too did the memory of hushed conversations in the days leading to their wedding. The distant thunder of war, Arthur's tense jaw when news arrived from the front, and the sharp knowledge that this peace might not last. Still, for this morning, she resolved to hold the silence as long as she could. Arthur stirred not long after, his breathing shifting before his eyes opened slowly, as if reluctant to leave whatever dream he had been keeping. When his gaze found Grace's, he smiled, small, genuine, and without restraint. "Good morning, wife," he murmured, the words low and warm in his chest. Grace felt her cheeks heat at the sound. "Good morning, husband." The word tasted new and delightful on her tongue, strange, only because it felt so natural. Arthur's hand brushed over hers, his thumb resting where the ring glinted. "I fear I might never grow used to this sight. You, here, with me." His voice carried a quiet awe, as though even now he scarcely trusted his own happiness. She shifted closer, resting her head against his shoulder. "Then don't grow used to it. Let it always feel wondrous." A pause stretched between them, the kind that wasn't empty but full of unspoken thoughts. Arthur's arm tightened around her. "I never imagined this peace. Not truly, and yet I know." He trailed off, his tone faltering, shadowed. Grace lifted her head. "You're thinking of the war again." His silence was answer enough. The crease between his brows had returned, faint but persistent. "Arthur." She reached up, smoothing a hand against his cheek until his eyes turned back to hers. "We cannot spend our days waiting for the sky to fall. You promised me a life together, no matter how brief or long, and I intend to hold you to it." For a moment he seemed caught between protest and surrender, but then his gaze softened and he pressed his forehead gently to hers. "You're right. Forgive me. I cannot help the fear, but I will not let it steal from us." The morning unfolded with a gentle ease. They dressed slowly, Grace laughing as Arthur fumbled with his cufflinks in distraction, and shared a quiet breakfast in their chamber rather than the hall. Oliver, dutiful as ever, brought the tray himself, his expression carefully neutral, though his eyes carried warmth when he looked at Grace. "My lady," Oliver said with a bow, "the household awaits your word on what you wish done with the remnants of the celebration." "Shall I see to it all?" Grace smiled. "Thank you, Oliver. Just see that nothing goes to waste, and tell the staff how grateful I am. Yesterday was perfect." Arthur glanced at his butler, an unspoken understanding passing between them. For Oliver, who had watched Arthur through darker years, yesterday's joy had been no small victory. After breakfast, they wandered the garden where only the day before they had stood beneath archways of flowers. The petals were already beginning to wilt, but Grace thought it beautiful still, the proof that something had bloomed, even if fleeting. Arthur's hand never left hers, his touch both grounding and clinging. But as they walked, the distant clatter of hooves on the main road reached them. A messenger rode past the gates, heading not for them, but for the town beyond. Even so, Arthur's body tensed, his gaze following the rider until he disappeared. Grace noticed. She always noticed. "Not today," she said softly, giving his hand a squeeze. "Let us have today." Arthur looked at her, his jaw tight, then exhaled. Today. By afternoon, sunlight streamed across the manor's long windows, gilding the halls in warmth. Grace and Arthur settled in the library, their favorite place when quiet beckoned. Arthur pulled an old volume from the shelves, one his father had once read to him, he confessed. And Grace leaned against his shoulder as he read aloud, his deep voice weaving through the words. It was simple, domestic, and utterly unremarkable by the world's grander standards. Yet for Grace, it was everything. As Arthur's voice trailed to a close, she tilted her head. "Do you ever wonder," she asked, "if happiness like this makes the future easier or harder to face?" Arthur considered, his thumb brushing absently over the edge of the page. "Both," he admitted. "It makes me grateful for every breath, and yet terrified of losing it. But I would choose this fear 1,000 times over a life without you." Grace's eyes blurred with sudden emotion. She pressed her lips to his hand, the words catching in her throat. "Then so would I." They sat in silence after that, listening to the faint crackle of the fireplace, hearts steady in rhythm with one another. Night fell gently, bringing with it a quiet that stretched across the manor like a protective cloak. Most of the household had retired, but Arthur and Grace lingered once more in their shared chamber. Grace rested in Arthur's arms, her head against his chest, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. "This morning felt like a dream," she whispered. Arthur's hand moved slowly through her hair. If it is, may it never end. The war remained unspoken for the first time in weeks. For that night it was only them. No duties, no shadows, no looming summons. Just the sound of their shared heartbeats, guiding them as one. The world beyond was stirring. But for now, within the walls of Caldwell Manor, peace reigned still.